guys, welcome back to Let's Talk About It with Courtney. I think this is episode 3. I'm back home in Washington State after doing a great visit over in North Carolina. And I'm really excited to welcome you to my home office and continue this process. It's been a long time coming for me, and I actually thought that would be something to talk about today. Let's talk about what I almost called a podcast. And I think I should tell you the first initial thought, and I was a gun-ho, and I still think maybe that's the book I write. I don't know. I hope to write a book one day, but calling it Love, Sex, and Divorce. Love, of course, was like the biggest chapter of my life. I was married for 11 years, together with my ex-husband for 13 years, had a beautiful daughter. We had a ton of deployments, cross-country move, and gosh, we grew up together from 21 to our mid-30s. I'll be 36 at the end of this month when I plan on launching this podcast, and I just knew love was a big part of it. Sex. If I didn't mention it, I'm sure I did. I did become a sex therapist, and I had a great practice going with my group practice called Awakenings in Raleigh. Hi, Awakenings. Hope you're tuning in. And why I wanted to learn more about sex is because I grew up in a culture where we didn't talk about it. And subsequently, my marriage struggled with it. I grew up in a very strict home where the girls especially could not ask and talk about sex. And that, of course, affected my marriage. And I mean, with all the cheating and infidelity that was also in my marriage, sex had a lot to do with it. So I just thought that would be pivotal, and also just my relationship from working with couples and sex and how important that was as a therapist to do and incorporate. So that's a big part of my life. And then divorce, because I got divorced. And with my divorce came a lot of feelings and fears and not really sure what to do and how to do it. Like, I was terrified to tell my clients I was getting a divorce. When you specialize in couples and sex therapy, and you are literally in the trenches with your clients, helping them fight for their marriage, make changes, and then it almost felt like coming out. I've never done that. I've never had that experience, but like, it felt like I had to come clean, come out, whatever that word is, that I was getting a divorce. And there's like this human side of me that's not, I mean, I was a therapist, I'm a human, but there's this human side of me that was terrified. I'm like, what if they don't want to work with me anymore? What does that mean? I mean, if I get a divorce, what does that say to me as a couples therapist? And these were just like the initial thoughts. This was not what happened. This is not who, like, in my real positive frame of mind, like in today's world, that helped me. That did not hurt me. And my clients were gracious and extended so much love to me at that time. Like, I can seriously get teary-eyed just remembering it. And having to explain why. And not that I had to, but I owed my relationships with them an honest thing. And to be honest, like, I had to take some time off of work too. And I didn't want to blindside my clients and not tell them. So, and along with divorce, there's like other details, like dating after divorce. Goodness, guys, that sucked. I am back single. I was engaged, and we will get to that episode. And gosh, I can't even like wrap my head around dating right now. But when I first started, like, I got introduced to apps that, by the way, I feel like I'm aging myself, did not exist. I think there was like eHarmony, Match.com maybe. But I had my ex-husband at freaking 20 years old. Like, 21. Like, I'm 36 almost, and I'm like, there wasn't a lot going on back then, let alone technology's only gotten better. And now going on apps would absolutely terrify me. I don't think I'll ever do it again. Sorry, I won't. And I just remembered like not knowing how to like work through that. And that's hard. And so Love, Sex, and Divorce, it just made sense. And like I said, maybe I'll write the book, who knows. But I think that's what we should talk about today. So with that being said, I thought, let's start with the love part. I was married, as I said, 11 years, and with my ex-husband for 13 years, almost probably longer, to be honest. It's hard to remember all those days. And there was a lot of love. Whenever people get divorced, and I'm not trying to switch subjects, love, like that was like, oh, did you just not love each other? I'm like, and as a therapist too, working with couples that do end up getting divorced occasionally, I'm like, if love was enough, trust me, my marriage would have worked. So many marriages would work. You can love someone, and I know with my whole heart that my ex-husband loved me. And I know I loved him. And in some capacity and way now, I do have love for him as my daughter's dad and wish him well. And it's just, that wasn't the issue. Love was not the issue. Growing up together was an issue. Becoming different people. And even at like the last part, and I think what's the strangest part when I tell you about this story, and then again, it might be a couple episodes, let's see how the recording goes, is the fact that I got divorced the year I thought my marriage was the best. And that's pretty bonkers. And I just think we should go all the way back to where I met him. I'm going to do my best to not say his name. Again, I will do my best by not sharing his name because he deserves the privacy. He's not married to me. He is not in this, and it's not about him. I'm going to tell, this is my story. My marriage is part of my story. It is not to bash him or to hurt him. And to be honest, it's not about him. Enough of my life was. This is about me and how I got to be where I am today. So let's talk about love. I was 21 years old, and I had just finished becoming a flight attendant. I worked for SkyWest Airlines, and it was my dream. Like, I couldn't wait to be a flight attendant. I knew at 17 I wanted to be a flight attendant. Anyone that knows me could have told you that. And I had not met someone. I met someone on my 21st birthday, but I went to Salt Lake City for training, and his name was Hunter. He's really into me. I just got out of a long-term relationship with my first high school or my first college boyfriend. We dated a couple years and met this guy Hunter. That's what we're gonna call him. It's not his real name, but that is the name we called him. And he was into me, and I told him, like, well, maybe we can go on a date when I get back from training. I had a couple weeks in between moving to Colorado. I got based in Denver, and I came home to Washington State, Tacoma, and met up with Hunter on the deal that was that he brought a friend and I brought a friend, because I was terrified, guys. Again, not a lot of experience dating. And I brought my friend, and he brought my ex-husband. We ended up meeting at the Rock Pizza place in Tacoma because my friend forgot her ID at a guy she was dating's house. She was doing me a favor. And we met up, and in walks my ex-husband. He's wearing a Creature band shirt, covered in tattoos. At this point, I have no tattoos. I'm barely exposed to the world. And he was magnificent. There was immediate chemistry. And my girlfriend and I just keep chatting with him, and Hunter's kind of being a douchebag too. Am I allowed to use the word douchebag? Hopefully. I'm sorry. He's being a jerk to the waitress. He deserves that name. And my ex goes like, what's up with you wanting to hang out with him? You know, he's awful to waitresses. We had just worked at Red Robin for years. So we were servers, and I was a server in the sky. Let's be real. And I remember saying, like, are you really talking crap about your best friend? Or he's like, I don't know this guy. They were like hall mates in the army. Like, he just like got his attention before it and asked if they want to meet some girls. How funny is that? Well, long story short, I really wanted to give him my phone number, my ex. And I wrote it on a piece of paper. I'm like, how do I do this? Like, I've never done this. I check it out. I give him like the longest, weirdest hug, hoping he'd ask for my phone number. He didn't. And then it was like a light bulb happened. I was like, I'm going to ask Hunter for his phone number for my friend. It's gonna work. And it did. It did. Literally did. More about Hunter later. And I texted him and I said, hey, it's Courtney. Long story short, like, I am into you. This is what I did. And he laughed so hard. And he's like, I was thinking about doing the same thing on how I would find you. And we immediately were hanging out almost every day. He was about to deploy, and I was about to head off to Colorado to be a flight attendant. We decided to kind of keep things open and see what happens. And a few months later, we were definitely serious. And shortly after, my airline actually had what would be the word? We opened up a base in Seattle because they started working with Alaska Airlines. So I was coming home. I ended up moving in with a friend. That didn't work out. So my ex-husband and I moved in together. He was at Ranger Battalion before. That's about probably as much as you'll know about his career. But I didn't know what a Ranger was. And gone a lot. But we really loved living together. We had this cutest apartment that we barely could afford back then. He was supposed to be living on base and was living with me. We weren't married, and that apartment is still such a special place. It's actually so weird. I live near that place now. I'm probably maybe 10 minutes away from it, and I pass it and I show my daughter, hey, Daddy and I used to live there, and she just looks at me like I'm crazy. But anyway, we move in, and about a year later, he proposes. And over in Mexico, we get proposed in Mexico, and that was amazing. And there's gonna be a ton of stories over the time period, but I was so excited to marry him. A big thing in my family culture is they struggle with sex before marriage, and we were having sex before marriage. And I think my parents really battled that relationship with him to the point where it got really rough, to where we decided to get married before he's deploying again. And that, gosh, it's so hard to talk about. It was so long ago. It's such a different relationship with him now than then. But we decided to get married before a deployment. It was our third deployment, and we're like, we want to have a wedding now, a shotgun wedding, if you will. I think that's what they refer to the military. And we'd have the reception later. And my parents struggled with it, and it ended up like really affecting me. It actually like is a huge part of my story. And meanwhile, he deploys, we get married, and then I battle the struggle of like working with my parents in my marriage and not feeling like I deserved a wedding and all these things, which landed me in therapy. And that was my first time ever going to therapy. I'm going to go back to that story, I promise, another day. But the years to come with my ex-husband. About a year after we were married, I found out my ex-husband was talking to someone. It was actually someone he went to high school with. And I found a bunch of, he left his email open on my computer. And again, like, it's weird how the universe always like sheds light to darkness, you know. And it was my first time ever being really cheated on in a real way, especially married. It was my first time being married, and it was awful and unexpected. And then there's also a whole connection with him on Craigslist ads, which I never understood, which I guess is the app of today, right? And meeting people, and I don't really know what was real, what wasn't real, but the relationship with his high school girl was obvious. I should correct that. The relationship he had with the girl he knew in high school did not have that kind of relationship with girls. Gosh, like that hurt, and I didn't know what to do. A year in, and I'm like, am I really getting divorced? And what is Craigslist? Why is he talking to people on Craigslist? Like, the girl made more sense, but I'm like a year married, and I go back to that and I'm thinking, why didn't I just leave then? like, it's hard to not go back to those chapters. Luckily, I have some really great friends that remind me, don't go back. My life would not be the same without those years to come. And my ex begged for me to stay and work it out, and we went to couples therapy for our first time, and eventually we moved on from it. And what I loved about the early years in our relationship, we traveled a lot. We've done Thailand, Dominican Republic, a ton of places in Mexico, throughout the country. I could travel and visit him in trainings, especially in Columbus, Georgia, and those random spots that being a flight attendant, again, had its perks. Fast forward a few years later, we buy a house. There's more infidelity and there's more forgiveness. And I was starting grad school when I was really hopeful we were in a better place. And a year in, we did struggle. And my ex was making a career move out to North Carolina. And to be honest, I wasn't sure I was going. I don't think he knew I was coming either. Well, he made it through this crazy process to get a job that he really wanted. And we decided as a couple, even though we struggled probably on and off since we got married, well, the year after we got married, we really wanted a new start. And again, we had so much love for each other. It wasn't that we didn't love each other. Like, that was still the craziest thing that I don't think people understand about divorce. And we moved to North Carolina, and shortly after, a lot of life happened. My biological mom died. My uncle died. COVID happened. And wild. The world, as you all know, shut down and all these things. And again, for most of you that don't know, military wives, especially Ranger wives, do not spend a lot of time with their husbands. So we had a whole year, we spent more time in that year than we probably spent like 6 years of marriage in. But we made it through it. And we had, even in the hard time, we ended up getting the best surprise of our lives, which was our daughter. We had never planned specifically for our daughter. We always knew if the time came, it would come, and we got Hazel. And even though it was like our marriage actually wasn't doing great, like, we were so excited to be Hazel's parents, and it really was a good start. So fast forward, I'm 8 months pregnant. This is a really hard one. I get a message in my inbox on Facebook from a guy. My ex-husband had just left for some training over in Arizona, and I got messaged asking if I was in an open relationship. And I almost didn't like open this email, but something that said Cameron, North Carolina, and we used to live like 20 minutes away from there. I was like, shit, I gotta open it. I opened it up and I said, no, I'm not in an open relationship. And can you tell me why you're asking me that? And he basically says, that's what I thought. My wife and I are in an open relationship, and your husband, because he was my husband at the time, was talking to my wife back in September, so I was about a month and a half pregnant, and ghosted her, and just came out of the woodwork bragging about this training that he's going to. He knew where my husband was. He knew what type of training he was doing, and he knew the cost of the infidelity would have been to my husband's career and to a person that was 8 months pregnant. And he was active duty, and he asked me not to tell anyone or share his contact information. because being in an open relationship in the military is not really looked upon either. If you're unfamiliar, infidelity in military is basically fireable. And I was terrified. Again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. My husband was in Arizona. I was 8 months pregnant. I had barely just started working. It took me almost a year to work in North Carolina because of licensure, COVID, exams, and testing centers being closed. I thought if I moved back to Washington that my husband would never have a relationship with his daughter. And thank God I didn't, by the way. That's like, I'll rat you out. Like, I stayed. And I remember like crumbling and thinking, I can't tell anyone. Because if I tell anyone, they're going to tell me to go home. They're going to tell me to go to Washington. And all I could think about was my baby, who's not even Earthside. Like, well, I guess she's Earthside, but tummy side in, you know, like, needed her daddy. And by the way, I needed him. Like, I needed him. How was I going to do a baby work and do all of that by myself and afford to live? And gosh, it was terrifying. And this is really hard to open up and tell y'all about, but I'm going to do it because I think it's important. And I just thought, like, I love him. He loves me. It sounds so crazy now. I've done a lot of therapy about it. I thought, like, how stupid could you have been for staying? But I was 8 months pregnant. And what else was I supposed to do? If I left, like, and this is like what's hard about being a therapist and being a human, is I just thought, this is psychologically due to my daughter. Like, attachment is huge in those first 2 to 3 years. And to create a safe, secure attachment, I'm like, she needs her dad. And then again, I need him. Like, how am I going to do this without Adam? I get a hold of my ex, and of course I'm screaming, crying, and I really don't know what to do. Again, he's over there begging me not to leave him, telling me he'll change and that nothing really happened, and he was just being dumb, and he wants to do this piece of life with me. And what basically it came down to me staying in that part, besides the whole like not wanting to raise a baby alone, was that I've done, at this point, probably catching my ex cheating on me. Catching, by the way, there was so much more I didn't know about until later. At least 4 times, 3-4 times, but there wasn't like evidence, there wasn't hard proof. I mean, there's proof, but it's a long story. And we're trying to keep to one podcast episode, at least for now. And I remember holding my belly, talking to Hazel, and saying, I'll do it one more time for you. I can do one for her. I can do one more attempt with her. And she deserved that. And again, I always knew he'd be a great dad. That wasn't like, when she got there, I knew he would love her, and I told myself that I could do that. Well, he returns home, and I think a week later, it was the day after St. Patrick's Day, I went into I'd actually tried turning her, moving her, and like 2 days before, manually turning my baby because Hazel was breached, and which meant I was gonna have a C-section, and I really wanted a natural birth. And I know this is jumping, but I promise it always makes sense. And it didn't work. Tried 3 times. Absolutely awful. Don't recommend it. And we had a follow-up appointment, and I learned that my daughter's coming early. I had low amniotic fluid. My ex is telling me she's not coming. The doctor's sending me to the hospital. And lo and behold, 8 hours later, I had a beautiful daughter in my hands. Now, did my daughter come early because of the stress of my marriage? Did my daughter come early because it was just her timing? I have no idea. I do know that she was perfect. I do know I delivered her safely. I did want that natural birth, but it was still a beautiful experience. And as soon as I held Hazel, I knew I made the right decision by staying with my ex-husband. One of my favorite memories I have in this is remembering what I did. I was exhausted post-surgery, and I'm looking at my ex-husband holding our beautiful daughter. And I was like, I gave that to him. And I remember just like marinating on that for a bit. And I remember looking at him and asking him, isn't she beautiful? Yeah, Courtney, she's beautiful, he said. Wasn't that just the most amazing experience? Yeah, you did so good, Court. Like, she's perfect. And I said, I want you to remember what I did for you. You would have not been here if I left you. I will do this one time for Hazel. I will not do it again. Courtney, no, I'm just telling you. This is my last time. And he like rolled his eyes, like whatever, and felt like a movie. Like it reminds me of like It Ends With Us. It happened, I did it first. And I just remember it being such a thing. I'm like, I did it once for her, I'm not gonna do it again. And it stuck with me for forever, as things do, as like a distinct memory and core memory for myself. And I was like, that was good. I was so glad he was there. Ugh, such a good dad. And a few months later, I got a heads up that he might have been trying to go out when I was actually heading to my grandfather's funeral. Fortunately, I caught him in enough time to where he went home. Again, you guys, truth always comes to light. He had asked a friend of ours to go watch the dogs while he dropped me off at the airport. And instead of going home, he asked his buddy to go watch her dogs, and he was going to go out. The buddy texted me because apparently my dogs had an accident, and he didn't want to bother him thinking my ex was in the field. And I immediately knew, not even 3 months after my daughter was born, that he was trying to do something sketchy. So I text him. I tell the friend, I was like, please just text him and say I know what he's doing and he's lying to you, I'm sorry. But tell him to go home or else he won't have a wife and kid that comes home. We fast forward, go to couples therapy. Again, this wasn't really like the moment where I thought he did something crazy. He had told me he wanted to just go out and get drunk, which he does not do. But the deciding factor of me coming back from Washington after going to my grandfather's funeral with our baby, that we'd go to couples therapy. Well, we started that journey and it really helped. It truly did. My ex deployed shortly after. Our daughter was about like 5 or 6 months old, and we had a lot of honest conversations, and he told me what he needed. He was very specific about my weight gain and losing weight and our relationship with sex, and but that he really wanted us to work out. And I shared like I needed emotional connection. I needed not to be beaten up about my weight and all these things. And again, like we're in a fast forward, he gets home from deployment. We end up having a pretty good year. Like we don't go back to couples therapy. Like I think the year after that, like it goes by so quick when you have a newborn baby. Anyone that's had a baby knows, like breastfeeding, I breastfed for like 6 months. We did have a lot of like conflict in that recovery place right after my grandfather's funeral. I moved to practices, and there's a lot of life in between. But what really messed with me the most was our last year of our marriage. I feel like we went through like a war together. We were war buddies, and we were finally out of the war. And I just remember gosh, it was January a couple years ago, and I think our daughter just turned 2, or was turning 2. Gosh, it flies by. I think she turned 2. Yeah, that's what it was. And I remember being so happy. I was starting to lose the weight he had asked me to lose, and we will talk about that another day. It was not great. And we were really doing well. I started going to individual therapy. He was getting ready to deploy. I started learning meditation, being introduced to World of Reiki, and all these cool mindfulness things that really truly helped me. And then again, like I said, immediately went to individual therapy. I had decided to leave my group practice and go out on my own. All these really cool things, and my ex was so proud of me. We finally made it. We'd gone through all the hard shit of our 10 years of marriage. Growing up, we were in our 30s. We finally felt secured. I was bringing a great income in. Like, it was finally like our time to shine. And I remember telling one of my best friends, Sam, she's like, how are you? How are things? He's deployed. He'd redone our whole yard. It was amazing. And we had really made this house that we had a home. And I said, we've never been better. And the weight was shedding off. I think just carrying weight that because of cortisol levels and stress and all these things. Our sex life was so much better. I worked really hard implementing techniques I learned from my own therapy approaches from my group practice and lessons, and really implementing trust in our relationship. And I remember just saying, it's the best we've ever had. Like, it's like the best sex, the best like parenting. Like I had even considered having another kid, and despite he didn't really want another, but would be open to one, and all these things. And we were like in a really good place. And then my ex deployed, like I said. Great communication, deployment. Side note, deployments never were really a big issue for us. We actually communicated really effectively over that, and I'll talk about that in another episode for those military wives and partners out there. But I was so happy. We were so good. It was our 11-year anniversary, is June 2 years ago, and my ex invited me to go to Paris to meet him there after the deployment, and I was ecstatic. I'd been to Paris before. I love Paris. Oh gosh, it's so beautiful. I would live there if I could. And we went there, and we had not always traveled the best together, but we had the best time. We had the best time. It's really hard to talk about. We took a motorcycle down to Normandy Beach. We had wine and lunch on the river. We toured museums. We had great sex. We truly enjoyed each other's company. And I just thought it was worth it. It was worth all these years of heartache, tribulations, all the infidelities, and the heart, becoming parents and all the things, and it was worth it. It was so beautiful, and I think it really rejuvenated our relationship more, because now we travel well together. It was amazing. And shortly after coming home, we immediately hopped in the car and went down to Florida to meet my brother-in-law, my sister, my nieces, and to visit my grandparents. Literally turned and burned within 48 hours. And I had a fantastic time. We went to Animal Kingdom and visited my grandparents, and it was so good. Y'all, I was on a high of life. I was like, this is what it was, and it was so good. And then 4 days later, my world crumbled. I think it was the 10th or 11th or whatever second weekend of July. I remember going to brunch with my husband at the time and our daughter, and sounds crazy, but it's like a light switch. She actually broke a wine glass, and then he ended up getting mad, and she was, gosh, 2.5 at a restaurant, broke a wine glass, like, what, this happens. And I remember just going from Paris to Florida to home and like back to work. I was exhausted. I remember laying down, taking a nap with my daughter, and my ex went to go play video games or something, and then we were home. I usually meal prep on Sundays for my ex-husband and myself, and the next day I did. Yeah, we had a great night. We hooked up that day, we had sex that day, and it was a Monday. And around 9 p.m., I got a message from my friend in Washington State, and I was living in Southern Pines, North Carolina, from my friend Lacey, who's no longer with us. And she texted me. It was like 9 p.m. I just finished meal prepping. My ex just went upstairs. He was sleeping in the guest room because he had an early work call, and that's what we did on an early work call day, so I could sleep, and he didn't wake me up. Lacey had messaged me and asked me to connect with her, and I said, hey, it's kind of late here. My husband's sleeping. Is it important, or can I call you back later? She said, good, it's about him. And my heart sunk. And I knew what happened. I knew it. I called Lacey. I said, just tell me. And she's like, I'm so sorry, Court. I know it happened in Washington. I truly hoped it wouldn't happen again. And long story short, my ex's best friend used to date Lacey. He ended up cheating on her with another girl that was in the military. Well, said girl is stationed in Fort Bragg, where my ex-husband was. And she had seen my husband on those Facebook pages called Are We Dating the Same Guy, or Is This Your Boo? And yeah, there's a ton of them. And she had asked Lacey if Courtney was like, did they have an open relationship? Is it something she turned her head to? If not, let Courtney know, kind of thing. And Lacey immediately knew. She knew about earlier affairs in our relationship, and she said, no, this is not something Courtney would accept, and I have to tell Courtney, do you have proof? That girl ended up finding my ex-husband on these sites for almost 2 years. I got a ton of messages, a ton of screenshots, messages about hashtag serial cheater, hashtag dumb wife, hashtag she knows or something, I don't know, but there was a lot. There is graphic details about possibly him having a third partner that likes to go watch, and y'all, there was a lot. I eventually just shut him down. And I knew I was done. My best friend, one of my best friends from Washington, calling me in North Carolina to tell me about my husband who had sex with me 6 hours before, or less. Was on these sites for years. Proven cheating, all these things. And I just thought, what the F am I gonna do? And all I remember is like saying, like, it's done. I go wake up my husband at the time. He knew. He immediately jumped out of bed. I said, where's your phone? He immediately hands it to me. I'm like, he fucking knows. And I remember just chucking it back. I'm like, you already cleared it. I'm like, come downstairs. Our daughter's room was next to that, the guest room. It was awful. He came downstairs and I laid into him. I'm like, I know. And he tried defending, tried begging, trying all these things, and I said no. And he just wouldn't stop. He's like, but what about our daughter? I'm like, what about her? You should have thought about her. Should have thought about me. And I just remember thinking, I can't believe I stayed married to him. I can't believe, like, he was going to Raleigh, Greensboro, out of the area. And I just remember thinking, where do my clients live? I had left a group practice that had clients all over the state, and they all lived in the state. I'm like, he could have hooked up with a client. Like, these websites, they might have my clients on them. My clients know my husband's name. And I just remember being mortified. And I just said, I'm done. I reminded him of the day at the hospital. And he's like, no. I said, no, remember, I told you I would do it once for her. And at this point, let's be real, it's probably the second time I did it for her. I was like, I cannot raise a daughter to think this is how we let men treat us. This is too many times. He's begging, crying, no. And I said, get the heck out. And I was done. Thought about the year before and just thinking it was magic and really thinking we made it. We had everything. We were finally in a great financial spot to really make great money together. I had the private practice I always dreamed of having. We had a beautiful daughter. He had the career he's always dreamt of having. We really did have it all. And just like that, it went away. And that's when the flooding of the gates wide open. Like, what does this mean for my career? What does this mean for my life? Like, what's gonna happen with our daughter, and how are we gonna co-parent? All I knew is that I was done with him in our relationship. And I will share more about like the journey of co-parenting, which is hard. It is hard to put everything away at the beginning, especially when they cheat and lie to you, and having messages and messages of how awful and graphic and detailed it was, and having him confess that he couldn't even tell me how many times he did it, that he knew the last time he physically cheated on me was February. The February I thought we were our best. And I was shattered for myself, but I knew I was done. And I remember thinking, like, this has to, like, mean something in my life. This has to help, or this has to do something. And I can tell you, fast forward 2 years later, that it has. I have gone through divorce to help other people go through divorce, and sit with clients in infidelity, work with couples in the despair. I know everything I've gone through has happened for a reason. I know co-parenting with my ex and the ups and downs it has happened for a reason. I can identify and empathize and really sit with clients and like know their pain, but sit with their pain. And as much as my ex tried to repair it, there was nothing more to do. And I was very clear on that. There's a lot after. There's what happens in the divorce, and I just knew I wanted a divorce, and I was done, and we had a lot more paths to do. And I think I'll talk about co-parenting in a different episode and what that looked like, and the proceedings maybe of our divorce, if I feel that it's a good thing to talk about. But if you're going through divorce, or maybe you thought your marriage was at its best and then your world blew up, it did. It happened. I can also tell you there's some really beautiful things that come from it. I ended up paying for my entire divorce. He did not pay a penny toward it. I ended up protecting myself and my daughter, getting the custody that reflected the actual time of having her. And despite my ex being very hard to work with here and there, I never let it truly get in the way of wanting a friendship with him, and I still don't have one. Maybe one day I will. But if you're going through it and you have kids, just focus on them. I am so proud of myself that I left, that I said no more. That when my daughter ever comes of age and asks me what happened, and I have no idea what that looks like, so please don't ask. I am prepared to tell her we don't let men treat us this way. And I didn't have a rule book. I didn't have a guidebook. I went to therapy. I healed. I worked on myself. I sat alone a lot. And I'm so glad I did it. The clients I was scared to tell. The couples I was scared to tell, like, do you still want to work with me? They were, I don't even know why I thought they wouldn't. They were kind and compassionate and honest, and reminded me that's not, like, my story isn't their story, and that they feel for me. And I got to really see it, like, how my clients have a type of love for me and respect for me and a relationship with me, and they really showed up in that way. They gave me the time off and never judged, and I could not thank my clients enough at that time, and my friends and family. This has probably been the hardest thing I'll probably share with you. I mean, there are hard things, but as I look back, I still had 13 years with a person I loved tremendously, and that love had nothing to do with my ex cheating on me. I know he loved me. He didn't heal what hurt him, and that's on him for him to fix and deal with. He thought he could maybe keep those things in the dark and that we could move on from it, and I don't know which Bible verse it is. It's like, truth always comes to light, and I'm grateful that truth came to light, and I'm grateful for our 11 years of marriage, our daughter, the lessons I've learned. He's probably my greatest teacher at this point. And I hope if you've listened and have kept with me throughout this episode that you see that there's light after divorce, and that just because it didn't work out doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of love. So this episode, let's talk about it. Let's talk about love. And that was my first love story, my first real love story, and a story that I only hope continues as my ex-husband and I navigate co-parenting for the years to come. And I hope a lot of pieces change, but I will continue to be open and authentic and share with you the hardships I've gone through in hopes that, one, you're not alone and you will survive. And there's one thing I believe truly in my whole heart: it was all divine. It was all supposed to happen the way it did, or else I wouldn't have my daughter. I wouldn't be helping the type of clients I'm working with now. And I truly think the best is yet to come. I know there will be love and greatness, and I am here along the way with you to share all the hard stuff. So thank you for sitting with me and hearing me open up about a pretty dark chapters in my life. And again, this wasn't to rip on my ex-husband. This is my part of my story, my part of my healing. And infidelity sucks, divorce sucks, and we're here to talk about it. Until next time, bye friends.